Welcome back to the Damn Parenting Podcast. I'm Eva and I'm really glad you're here. Now, you might be packing a lunchbox and one shoe is missing again, and someone's crying because, the banana broke in half. And in the middle of all this, it's going to hit you that my child's starting school in another language and I can't protect them from every moment. I'm not going to be there, and I can't protect them from the confusion or the loneliness, and not from the feeling of wanting to say something, but not having the words. If you're raising your child with more than one language, that worry comes with subtitles. Because suddenly it's not just, will my child be okay? It's also, will my child be okay in another language? So this month on the podcast, we have focused on our own emotional support, reset, clarity, and joy. And today we're zooming in on the support of our multilingual children with someone I absolutely love having on the show. Mimi is a residential linguist, emotional language specialist, and the person I call when I want the science and the soul in the same sentence. And today, we're talking about something that sounds very small, but it's actually huge. Why emotional vocabulary is the secret safety net for multilingual kids starting school. Mimi, welcome back.
Hi, it's great to be back. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us back and with such a great topic, because maybe there's many kids that are going to start school now in 2026. Maybe they have already just started, or even they're already in a year or two. I think this is super valuable wherever people are on their journey. So first off, we don't even need to ask why emotional vocabulary matters so much for kids starting school, but I do want to understand, why is it so valuable for us to know, because we're raising our multilingual children?
When you think about school start, you often think about the academic load that comes with it and the academic requirements. But we often forget the emotional load that comes with it. And this is one huge change for children, and you can expect a lot of pattern changes. It's a huge change, regardless if you're raising a monolingual or a multilingual child. But with multilingual children, apart from being exhausted, overwhelmed, stimulated beyond belief, you can expect a lot of pattern changes, such as the home language taking a back seat, them stopping to respond in the home language, even if they speak a little bit of the school language. I've worked with a family just recently, and the little girl just stopped speaking the school language. She started speaking it at home more, but not at all at school. So it all comes with all kinds of changes. And imagine what happens to them and to their system if they don't have the words to describe it and to get out the frustration. Language is emotion. There is no doubt about this. Doesn't matter how you look at it. And if a child cannot express very simple things like, I'm scared, it's too much, I'm angry, I'm overwhelmed, and so on, it won't magically stop them or prevent them from feeling those things. Fact of the matter is, it's going to make it even more frustrating because they can't get it out. And they need to make sense of them, and they need to express them. Otherwise, it translates into physical outcomes and reactions of sorts. Behavior starts speaking. That's what happens. So we might see a lot more issues, and we might think, oh, potentially it's the language. It happens often that a lot of people or even teachers would say, oh, they feel so frustrated because they don't speak the school language. And often it comes with recommendations. And this is in inverted commas, like your child is very frustrated. They can't express themselves. You need to just focus on the school language. Or kids get labeled as difficult. And once a child is labeled difficult early on, this kind of label stays with them, unfortunately. So teachers are stressed, parents are stressed, children are stressed. And it just creates the perfect storm of sorts. And emotional vocabulary becomes a true lifeline. And we're not aiming to reach some sort of perfect expression. What we're going for with our children is always the emotional safety and helping them being understood, feeling safe where they are.
Which is crucial. There is this belief that kids pick up languages like they're linguistic sponges. And I think we've already debunked that in previous episodes.
Yeah.
But is emotional language simply part of the natural process, or are we missing something important here?
The thing is, and I've seen this in a lot of families that I've worked with, people just don't have emotional language on their radar. And you're absolutely right. We already debunked this giant misconception that children will just pick up language, alongside whatever else they're doing. But they would learn perhaps playground phrases or what they learned from other kids. But those basic conversation skills, because we see them, it doesn't mean that they're picking up what they need. And we assume that they kind of express their needs. And when they start misbehaving or being frustrated or being overwhelmed or throwing a tantrum supposedly out of nowhere, we try to look for the reasons elsewhere. And yes, it might absolutely have other reasons. Maybe something happened, but we really need to look at their social and their emotional expressions. And I've noticed that parents don't really have this on their radar. They're not really deliberately thinking about this. And those words to express how they feel or what they're going through or how their body feels, where it feels, they don't come automatically. You have to help them. You have to model it. You have to create space for them. Once you model it and once you practice with them, for them to express it without judgment, without labeling, so they can practice and work with those words and try to get to know themselves and get to know their body. And the best thing you can do for them is start in the home language at home, where they feel safe, the language that they've been raised in, the language they feel safe in with you, and the language in which they've started building their cognitive skills.
And can I ask, for the parents who have two different speaking languages parents, is that applicable to both of them? One parent will be teaching them the emotional words in that language, and the other parent will be teaching them the emotional words in that language? Or how does that work?
I would work with both parents. This is what I do at home with my kids. I bought a couple of books about emotions and feelings, very simple, but with lots of pictures. They're both in English because I couldn't find anything else, but it doesn't matter. We look at the pictures. I talk to them in Bulgarian and they talk to their dad about this in English. English is definitely their stronger home language. And they very often would express themselves in English. So they would express themselves in the stronger home language. But I still pick it up and continue with them in Bulgarian because they understand and they feel safe, because it's the feedback that you give them. It's also the emotional feedback that you give them, your energy. And I have to say it's worked quite well.
So let's zoom into a child's experience for a moment. What actually happens emotionally when a child starts school in the new language, which obviously in the Netherlands will probably be Dutch? Even if they do seem confident or chatty and they have been to daycare probably with Dutch, but what's actually happening for that child in their head when it comes to the languages?
It's a lot. A lot happens. When something new happens in a child's life, something new that is big, you can always expect a lot of changes. And starting school is a huge thing on so many levels. And as I said before, both for monolingual and multilingual children. And when they start school in a new language, if they don't speak the language at all, if they haven't been exposed to the language before, they can feel insecure. And this adds to all the other feelings of newness that they have. They can feel more isolated. They can feel more confused, a lot more tired. It's like a lot more pressure is built on them. They want to say things and they don't know how to express them. And they get confused, not because it's too many languages. I want to clear this right away, because when I say confused and language, it happens right away. People are thinking, oh, yes, I knew it. It's adding yet another language with the other languages. No, they get confused because it's new. And when they can express those feelings, when they can't say, even at home, how they feel and what's happening to them, it's really difficult. And a lot of issues that might come up at school because of it, especially if this is a whole different topic, but it's always a good idea for a teacher to try to learn a couple of words of the child's language, very basic, to sort of get to know them. But I don't want to get into this too much, but it can cause a lot of misunderstandings, misinterpretation of behavior, just as I mentioned before. And it might really diminish the participation in school life because of all that.
And this is, I guess, where the things like behavior and shutdowns or big emotions can show up, like you said, not because they're being difficult, but just simply because they're overwhelmed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as I mentioned before, parents and teachers and society, we're very quick to label children as being difficult, but we rarely look at the real reasons why a child is misbehaving. And this is one point that we can really focus on to work on when a child starts school in a new language. Work on the emotional expression first at home. Haven't done so yet, at least when they start school.
So you mentioned there about the teacher learning some of the words in that child's language. But should we start by teaching emotional words in the school language? Probably Dutch, obviously, whatever it might be. Or should the focus actually be just staying within our home language, as you mentioned earlier?
I would definitely start with the home language. And it's because they've started building their cognitive skills in this language. So you want to continue building them. You want to continue building the language. You have as a parent, a caregiver, you have a very strong bond with your child, an emotional bond, and you want to continue building on this. And this can absolutely work in your favor when you talk about emotions and emotional expression. And yes, a lot of people would say, okay, my child is starting now school in a different language. Why bother continuing with the home language? They need the school language. And absolutely they do. But emotional processing starts in the language where a child feels safest and they feel most like themselves. Because if a child can identify or talk about emotions in any language, they won't magically start doing it in a completely new language, whichever the school language is. So, continuing the development of the home language will support the development of the school language. Like, this is a fact. And continuing supporting the cognitive development of your child in your home language will help them with the school language. So, home language is the training ground. It's the trenches that you start working in, the foundation, and then you continue building in the school language. You provide a space for your child to be themselves and express themselves and trial and error while finding their footing. And then it's going to be much easier to do this in the school language.
So, quick question here. This is just coming to me here. So, we're doing everything in our home language, we're educating, we're doing the best with the emotion at home. Do they learn the emotional language in school? Because obviously they're 4 starting in the Netherlands. So, are they going to be learning emotional language in school? Do you know?
I'm not familiar how different schools approach this, but this is one thing that I really like about the Dutch school system is that they have the first 2 years to acclimate. It's focused on their social emotional development of themselves and in the group. And as I said, I'm not sure how each school approaches this. In my children's school, they have so-called life lessons. So they talk about different aspects of life and different aspects of togetherness. And they do it, of course, in a very, very child centric way so they can understand and participate. And this can be very, very helpful.
Well, let's make this practical, I guess. What can parents do at home in our real life, in the messy, busy family life we usually lead, to help children build emotional vocabulary across the languages?
Well, you can do a lot, even if it seems like it's nothing spectacular, to a person. Using emotional talk in daily life. It's not like, okay, I'm just going to sit you here now and let's do this in a more pointing a finger kind of way, in a very formal way, but just utilizing the everyday moments, such as, oh, it looks like you're tired. It looks like you're happy. Or I think what happened today was frustrating. How did it make you feel? Or you seem angry. Why? To sort of start bit by bit to connect the specific description, the word, the label, with whatever they're feeling or whatever happened to them in that particular moment. Of course, books. I always recommend books. It's a very, very useful way to teach kids anything, really. And if you can buy some books on emotions, it's fantastic. If you can borrow them from the library, there are those wordless search and find kind of books. You can use those as well. But really, any book that you have, any story that your child likes that you pick up, you can turn into emotional exploration because there is always a story that's going on, and you can always try to kind of elicit what your child thinks it's happening. How does somebody look? Do they look happy? Do they look sad? How do they think the character feels? And then asking them, how do you know that? How did you figure it out? Is it by like their body language? Is it their facial expression? So what do you think they need in this particular moment? Do you think they need to lay down because they're tired? Do you think they need a hug? Do you think they need a quiet moment to themselves? All those questions are super simple and don't need any preparation, but you can elicit all this information and all those answers and start this thinking process where they connect story, pictures with the emotional expression and what each emotion kind of brings with it. When I'm tired, I need to lay down. When I'm angry or frustrated, perhaps I need a moment to myself and things like that. Another thing you can do is you can do a simple chart and you can even start building it in both languages. So once they understand it in your home language, so maybe they can start learning the words in the school language. And this is great visual support because different children respond to different type of stimuli. Some children would like to look at pictures more. Others would like to work with the book and the story. And others would love if you have some props like different animals, or you can connect it all together, depending what works for you in this moment, what is doable, what you can do and you're prepared to do as a parent and caregiver, because sometimes on those long days, you don't really feel like doing much. So even little bits help, but it helps them gradually build comfort with the vocabulary over time. And what you can do for them, the same as the teacher can learn some things in your home language, certain words and phrases to help your child. You can always give them like a list of a few, but you can also teach your child very simple things in the school language to start with. I need help. I don't understand. I'm scared. Once they know this in the home language and know the concept behind it, they build this conceptual knowledge, they've built this cognitively. So then it transfers onto the school language and they will only need the word for this, the label, what it means, how to say it in the school language. And it will help them be calmer. And of course, you can teach them to express themselves without speaking. You don't always have to say stuff to express yourself because some children are shyer. And as I mentioned before, some children might refuse to speak even if they have some of the school language. They're overwhelmed. This is how their mind works. And they go through a silent period in the beginning. So just tell them, oh, it's okay to draw something, to express how you feel. And you can also practice this at home. You can use a prop, some sort of an object. You can use a drawing. You can use gestures to express yourself. But all this needs to be practiced at home so they know what to do, because this knowledge is not going to come to them out of nowhere. And as I said before, there are certain words you can teach them at home. Very basic things like being angry, being worried, being frustrated, sad, excited, confused, jealous. This was a big one in our house until we figured out what it meant and how it showed itself, how they felt. So that was really interesting, especially when my daughter, who's 4 years younger than my son, when she was older, and this jealousy kind of aspect of, oh, I have this, but you don't have this, and I want yours, but no, you're not allowed to have it, and all those things, especially for my daughter. For my son was not such a big deal when he was her age, but for her, it was a big thing when you have an older sibling, because then it takes a whole different dynamic when you have siblings in the game. Yeah, I think those are some tips that parents and caregivers can use right away, and they don't really require much preparation, besides perhaps going to the library and checking out some books.
So we figured out ways to help our children, but if we had to keep this again even more simple because parents are already overwhelmed, What are the core emotional and needs based words you'd want children to have before they start school?
Always keep it simple, absolutely simple. You can do start with some feelings words, like some stuff that I mentioned before, like sad, happy, frustrated, overwhelmed, excited, confused. And then perhaps teach them some words to express their needs, like I need help, stop. This is actually one of the first things they learn in Dutch school, to say stop, hou up. And I was very surprised when my son came with this, to say, I don't want you to continue doing what you're doing. And they teach them the words, but they also teach them to show this with their hands, to do a stop sign with both hands. And I really, really like that. If they want something to be repeated, to say again, they don't need to be, I don't like the word perfect. They don't need to express their thoughts and feelings in full sentences, like you don't need to be chasing this. Just first start with simple words and then they'll build on this, because they'll feel understood, they'll feel seen, and then it will be easier to build on this. And perhaps some simple words if they are interested in building connection, although kids are very good at this. And especially children growing up with more than one language, they're excellent at building connection, even when they don't understand each other, because they're very much used to people not understanding them. But when they're in this environment, when there are a bunch of kids, children react in different ways. So teaching them a couple of words like play and share and hurt, perhaps, if somebody does something that hurts them physically, would be a good idea to teach.
Okay, well, those are some great lists, and lists that basically we all need, even as adults sometimes. So I do know some teachers.
Let's just frame it as ideas, because if you say list to people and they think it's another thing I have to do, another to do I have to put on my list, let's just frame them as ideas.
Indeed. And we know some teachers and school leaders and support staff listen to this podcast too. So if you could speak directly to them, what would you want schools here in the Netherlands to understand about the multilingual children and the emotional language?
One thing I want to say is, when you see that they're struggling, or when you see that they're being difficult, and this is again, inverted commas, it's try to see past the behavior, past the surface level behavior, and try to figure out why they're acting, what's the reason behind it. Because odds are they're probably drowning. And I know that teachers and educators are very sensitive with children who start school for the first time, but a lot of people don't realize the weight of not being able to express yourself, especially when you're starting school in a new language and not being able to express your emotions, because you have the weight of not being able to say anything, and then another layer of not being able to express how you feel and how this whole situation is making you feel. And please, if you have a child who speaks just a bit of the school language, or is able to hold a normal conversation and they're still misbehaving, don't assume that the comprehension and the basic communicative skills automatically mean emotional understanding. Use visuals to help them. Try different ways to help them. And I realize there are a lot of children, and all the different children have their own issues, but try to slow down your language. Let children speak in their language. Speak to the parents. Try to figure out what it means. And honestly, nowadays, we have all those tools, like all those different apps and websites you can use to translate. So if a child is saying something in their home language, in their strongest language, just record and have an app translate this for you. Also, this is a way to show understanding. It's not that you're standing there and waiting for the child to walk towards you. No, you're willing to walk towards them as well. And this also builds emotional connection, because the child sees, okay, I feel safe with this person because they are trying to understand me as well. Obviously, those are not all conscious thoughts. Those are all the feelings that build up based on your behavior. All the messages that you're sending by behaving like that, by showing interest in them and showing willingness to understand them rather than put a label on them, stick a label and say, okay, they're difficult and they have behavioral issues. And talk to the parents, really talk to the parents. I tell this to parents all the time, how important it is to, build a exchange with the teacher, to look for exchange, to build a partnership. But it's very important for the educators to also seek this, especially with children who start with little or no school language, who show certain behaviors, and not to automatically assume that they're being difficult because they go through a silent period, that they're a lost case. Because the more you stress about it, the more they stress about it. You show it as an educator, you show it in ways that sometimes you're not even aware of, but children are really good at picking those things. And it might backfire, them thinking, okay, I'm not accepted. Something I'm doing, I can't help myself, but whatever I'm doing is not coming across in a way that I am accepted. And, it turns into a vicious circle. The basic words, but I said this before, ask the parents, even if you don't have the time to go online and look for words, talk to the parents and ask them, hey, can you give me a list of 10 or 20 words that I can use with your child? Write the transcription of how to pronounce them so I can sort of try my best. Those are little things, but they mean a lot.
I think those are some great suggestions, Mimi. Thank you so much. I do know that a lot of schools are maxed out with kids and a lot of classes have multilingual kids in them. So I hope you're able to stand up for your child and be able to say, here you go. I'm giving you some support as the teacher to understand my child better and to see my child for who they are. So if parents could walk away from this episode with just one message, what should it be?
Start with the emotions. Start teaching them emotional language in your home language. This is, as I said, often overlooked. Parents don't even have it on their radar, but it's very important to be intentional about this. It's very important for your child to learn to express how they feel, and in the very basic terms to start with, and to be able to explore it. Another one, if I can add, it's not a capability issue, and multilingual children might get labeled as difficult or less absorbed in a way because they can't express themselves the same way that their monolingual peers do. Again, we're coming to a point that is a much longer conversation where monolingual norms are being attached to multilingual children and they're being judged and treated by monolingual norms. But this is a different conversation. And it's an adjustment issue. It doesn't happen overnight. So starting as early as you can and having them go through the process and learn to use the emotional language and to attach certain feelings or certain ways their body feels to those words. And it can look messy sometimes. It's life with kids. It's always messy. So this is just one part of the mess. But when kids can name what's going on inside them, even in a few very simple words, the school day in a new language might be just a little bit less scary and a little bit easier to get through.
Well, Mimi, this has been such a grounding conversation because it reminds us that language, it's not about sounding smart or just trying to fit in, but it is about feeling safe and our child feeling seen and also understood. Being a child is already hard enough. So Mimi, thank you so much for bringing this to the episode because it was your suggestion. You really wanted to talk about this today because you've had these questions from other parents. And so this has been such a valuable episode for many parents and all parents to be able to tap into as and when they need it. And to every parent listening right now, wondering if they're doing enough, well, as Mimi said, your child doesn't need perfect language. They just need enough language to feel safe in their world. And sometimes that starts in your kitchen or bedtime stories or those tiny daily I see you moments long before it starts in the classroom. So thank you for listening to the Damn Parenting Podcast. If this episode resonated with you or if you know someone whose child is going to be starting school this year, be sure to share it with another parent because they'll be raising kids between languages and cultures too, and nobody should navigate this alone. So until next time, go gently, speak kindly, and remember, when kids can name what's going on inside them, the world becomes a little less scary. and a lot more possible. Until next time.